Thank you for joining us on the Nikki Medoro Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Kim McAllister is not here today, but I do have a very special guest joining us. She's a friend of the show, and she talks about one of the issues that I think all of us feel every single day, definitely every single month when we open our online bills or open our mailbox. And that, of course, is in what way is PG&E screwing us over again? Before we get to Loretta Lynch, former CPUC president, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that thumbs up button. And now let's welcome Loretta Lynch back to the show. Loretta, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Nikki.
Okay, so the biggest thing that happened just today when we're recording this, which is, of course, on Thursday, is that the CPUC has voted 3-1 to approve a community solar program. Earlier this week, I believe, or last week, the Chronicle released an op-ed, and the headline said California is about to side with PG&E again, this time to kill community solar projects. A bunch of viewers, listeners emailed the Nikki Medoro Show saying, get Loretta on, explain what's going on. So I guess my first question, it's been approved by the CPUC. That's the latest news. When we talk about community solar projects, explain what that is to people that may not understand.
Sure. Community solar is a way for people who can't put rooftop solar on their house for whatever reason, or their business, to have access to solar, ideally paired with battery storage. So what it allows is it allows a community, that could be a neighborhood, that could be a business with surrounding houses, it could be business to business, a group of customers to band together to develop their own solar plus storage. And that doesn't have to be on their houses. It could be in the field next to a farm that's next to a shopping mall or something, but it's close by. So it's generation that's clean with storage that's either close by or on somebody's property that's big enough to serve more than that property. Okay. So basically it's over the fence. It's bigger than a microgrid and smaller than a utility, if you want to think about it. So it's a dog, not a cat, but it's not a camel.
There you go. Okay, that's a great analogy. Now, how would this be paid for? Do the people that utilize the power pay for it? And what kind of neighborhoods are we talking about? You mentioned businesses, but I would imagine lower income apartment dwellers, people that, maybe can't afford their own solar, let alone put it on the building they live in.
Exactly. It could be really any community, although the PUC would have special incentives for low-income communities. Okay. And for instance, if you think about all those warehouses out in the Central Valley that have tons of roof space, but they don't actually use that much electricity themselves, they could put solar across their roofs, put batteries there too, use it for themselves, but then also distribute it to their neighbors for a price. And so this ruling was about setting those rules about how community solar can work and who can participate at what price, those kinds of rules. And so that this all came about because there was legislation passed in 2022 from Assembly Member Chris Ward from San Diego that said to the PUC, you may consider expanding community solar programs because we've got so much solar in California. Battery technology is really developing. Let's pair batteries with solar and see if we can serve neighborhoods or communities more cleanly and cheaply.
And so that sounds like a good idea, but I'm sure that there's some sort of caveat that we're not considering given the op-ed from the Chronicle.
Well, so because the law said, hey, PUC, consider this, they did. They opened a case, an administrative proceeding, and they allowed everybody to come in and say, hey, what's your proposal? And so a big part of this is who can connect to who can benefit from the community, and also at what price, right? What price can you sell that solar plus battery storage for to the community? And what we're really looking for here is close in generation so that you don't have to add the cost of a big transmission line to get that power to a community. So we're not citing these community solar projects in Kern County to serve Los Angeles or, to serve Bakersfield. We're citing them right in the community, hence the name. Right. So a group of environmental justice consumers, the California Environmental Justice Alliance, plus a variety of other consumer groups banded together and said, hey, let's do it this way. And this will incent the most solar across the board, not just for low-income communities. And the utilities said, oh, no, let's do it this other way. Limit the program. Don't put too much excess power on the grid. That might tax the grid. And limit the kinds of customers who can benefit. And guess which proposal the PUC chose?
Okay.
They
And that
chose
was
the
that one.
utilities proposal, which meant that we already have some pilot projects to try community solar out in various ways, in a very limited way, to see if it works, kind of proof of concept. So the utility said, hey, why don't you consolidate those pilot projects and then focus it only on low income customers? What the utilities didn't say, and what the PUC hasn't told you, is that nobody signed up for those pilot projects because they were unworkable. There were so many rules and regulations, and the price that excess solar could be sold to the neighbors for was so low, it didn't pencil out. So guess what? Nobody signed up for those programs. So they've closed the programs that didn't work anyway. Okay, well, I guess that's good. Why have non-working programs on the books? And then what they did do was they expanded slightly a pilot program that is just for low-income communities. And I'm all for bringing solar to low-income communities, but that wasn't the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill is community solar for all. So only for low-income communities that can benefit from additional federal tax credits for serving low-income communities. That's the only program the PUC is really authorizing. It's called the DAC-GT, for Disadvantaged Communities Green Tariff. Okay. But what's wild is then they capped the amount of megawatts that could be produced in those programs. And while they raised the cap from the current pilot project, because it's just a pilot, they didn't raise it very much. And so really what this means is the utilities aren't going to have to do much more than a couple more pilot projects to hit the cap and then end community solar. So instead of creating a broad rule that would work for all communities and really encourage people to go figure out where they could put solar and batteries together to serve their neighbors or their neighborhoods or their communities in smaller towns, once again, the utilities prevailed, and they put up these huge barriers to anybody benefiting, aside from a small little group of people who get special tax credits because they're in low-income districts. And even then, they limited that. If we wanted to serve all low-income customers across California, woohoo! But that's not what the PUC did. The PUC limited the program in scope and scale and price, whittling it down to, from my perspective, a mere shadow of it, what should have happened and what the bill's intent was to happen.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly, Assemblymember Ward is, let's just say, ticked off about how the PUC turned and twisted his encouraging legislation into a discouraging program. But the problem is the bill was written as the PUC may expand these programs, not that the PUC shall. And so the PUC may ran a truck through the intent of the legislation and did side with the utilities yet again.
Yeah. It just again, the way you're describing it seems as if obviously these utilities are trying to handicap the growth of solar communities.
Sure they are.
And
Every kilowatt of solar somebody puts on their roof and then serves themselves is a kilowatt of solar or a kilowatt of power the utilities aren't selling to us at premium prices.
right.
This is all about money. Follow the money and you will see where the utilities land. And the utilities want a top-down, regionally, centrally created system that they control, and they price us, into economic oblivion pretty much.
Right.
And instead of having a bottoms-up, community-created, locally distributed, and locally owned cleaner system that ideally is cheaper if you don't have to keep larding on all these excessive utility infrastructure costs.
Exactly.
And so it's a big battle for the future of California's energy system. And technological developments have enabled this battle, because 20 years ago, we really couldn't have community solar in this way because the battery technology and even the solar technology wasn't advanced enough to really serve a community. Today it is, and the utilities are hanging on by their fingertips. Well, really what they are is they're hanging on to the PUC. They have their PUC in their grip, because they want to continue to make money and the most money possible. And the more their customers are freed from having to pay their outrageous rates, or even get, if you can reduce your usage through solar or wind or other means, then the utilities bottom line suffers. And they are spending big bucks to make sure that their customers stay captured.
Mm. And again, as we move more toward electric cars with Governor Newsom leading the helm on that, obviously we become more beholden. We can't either be part of a community grid, a solar grid, or even, I live in a rental. I can't just decide to put solar on this house, even if I want to, even if I could afford to pay it. It's not my house. And so many
Right.
people find themselves in that situation. And then, of course, what happened also recently, of course, was that approval of that cap or that fee, that flat fee. Is there something different with that? Because I've been seeing that they're re-examining it, that they may be going back to that. What have you heard about that?
They're re-examining it to raise it. So this was a bait and switch, a classic bait and switch. The PUC came in low, got it authorized, weathered the storm, and now they're going to raise it to what the utilities really wanted all along, or at least some version of that.
And that's how much?
Well, the utilities originally proposed $70 to $90 a month, depending on the kind of customer you are. And the PUC
And that's on top of
said
your bill. That's on top of your
top
bill.
of your bill. Well, technically they would say it's not, because they're slightly discounting the price of electricity per unit. So what I liken it to is you go to the store and there's a sale on chicken, and chicken normally costs 40 cents a pound, because that's what PG&E's average rate is 40 cents a kilowatt. And the PUC said, hey, we're putting a sale on chicken electricity. It's now 36 cents a pound. But to check out of the store, you got to pay 24 bucks. Well, you got to buy a whole heck of a lot of chicken discounted at 4 cents a pound to make up that 24 bucks. So most people's bills are going to go up.
And so that's been approved, or is that still being
Oh, no,
negotiated?
that was approved. And they're just going to the second phase. So they approved $24.15 a month. The utilities have already filed to increase that, not just once, but have an annual escalator, meaning an automatic annual increase hereafter. Because, hey, if you can take a mile, why didn't you, take the whole state? It's just
Exactly.
crazy.
Well, yeah. And of course, if it's automatic, then they don't have to get approval from the CPUC, correct?
You don't have to prove up their cost, right? That's the whole key. They don't want to have to prove their cost, because they just want to say, hey, give us the money. Because if the PUC really took a sharp pencil and a good look at these costs, they would see that they are not reasonable and should not be approved. That's the problem.
But they don't do their job, and we talked ad nauseum about that. I know that we talk about this. I know we express our frustration all of the time. I know myself, Kim, you have expressed frustration at Governor Newsom, like, do something about this. But there was also a recent article that one of our viewers sent me, and thank you so much for sending it, on the national scale and what President Biden and other states are trying to do. The article was kind of looking at this technology with the lines that are used. And apparently this new type of wire, it has a core made of carbon fiber surrounded by this kind of trapezoidal piece of aluminum, and it doesn't sag, which we've talked about leads to some of the fires that we've seen here in California, and can take up to double the amount of power as the old lines. Now, obviously, there's also the cost of it. It's way cheaper to kind of do it this way than to build all these definitely new transmission lines. Talk a little bit about this move to this sort of technology and whether or not we can, even if it's not seen right here in California, if other states do it or President Biden is proposing it, that we could possibly see it here in the Golden State.
Well, we should see it. I think it's a great idea. And this is what I mean about the costs aren't reasonable.
Right.
I'm all for safety and reliability, right? That is the job one of the PUC and the utilities. The question is how you do it and at what cost. And the utilities have proposed the slowest, hardest, most expensive way to
Of
do
course.
it, which
Mhm.
is underground new lines. So they're building a new line as they're undergrounding it. And that means they get to profit fully off that new line because those old lines that are all over the place, they've already fully depreciated, meaning sucked every penny of profit out of those lines. So all they get is the entire cost of operations and maintenance on those lines. So they want to get rid of those old lines and make new lines so they can profit anew. That's why they asked to underground thousands of miles of lines that frankly don't need to be undergrounded
Right.
because there are alternate technologies. One is to cover conductors. That will
Right.
solve the safety problem. You can do it for 10 times less money. It costs $600,000 a mile to cover your conductor versus $6 million a mile to underground. Big difference because then you put a 10% profit on that. PG&E makes a whole heck of a lot more profit per mile of undergrounded than covering conductors. And what this Washington Post article talks about is a similar technology. Just change out the wire so that the wire doesn't sag or sway or slap. And it has the benefit of being able to carry more power. So you don't even need to construct new lines, which is fabulous given this coming electrification in EVs. So a lot cheaper, smarter, and frankly quicker to rewire between the poles and might as well cover that conductor while you're rewiring. And then you have safe, reliable, and more energy for a fraction of the cost of undergrounding. But
Exactly.
which way does PG&E choose? The most expensive, most
Of course.
profitable way. And that's where I really fault the PUC. We don't have the money to spend on all the PG&E boondoggles. We just don't. And we don't have the time it takes to underground, given all of our wildfires. We
Mhm.
need to do it the fastest, most effective, and most cost effective way. And that is with this new kind of wire and with covering conductors. And that would just be a win win all around. The problem is, follow the money. It would mean less profits for PG&E. So guess what California isn't doing?
Right. And again, I know I'm a broken record with this, Loretta, but you'd think that Newsom and other governors across the country would want the win, would look at consumers who are up to here with their high electricity bills, and in addition to all the other bills that keep going up. I mean, look what I did for you. Look, we're going to use the smartest, fastest, most inexpensive yet effective way of getting you your power. I I guess I'm just always so flabbergasted when we speak that they don't want the win, and that just proves to me how beholden they have to be to the utilities, which worries me immensely. It's like, what do the utilities have on Newsom? What do they have? Oh, what do they have on all of these other lawmakers? It's just money. That's so sad, Loretta. I'm so frustrated.
Well, the interesting thing is, other governors actually are taking the reins and running with them. And other governors are protecting their customers and going solar. Very weirdly, Ron DeSantis is one of the leaders of going solar in Florida.
Really?
Absolutely. JD Pritzker in Illinois, one of the leaders in reining back utility profits.
I mean, I just feel like we should throw, I mean, gosh, the debate between DeSantis and Newsom and how he loves to take him on. I mean, we need to start throwing that in his face. If DeSantis is winning in this battle, I mean, of course, that
Yeah.
has to, just irk Newsom to no end. How is DeSantis selling it to Floridians and Newsom just not wanting to do that for us? It just blows my mind.
Well, it's cheaper to have solar and it's better for the environment. And whether or not DeSantis recognizes climate change, he recognizes the value of a dollar. And there's lots of sun in Florida, just like there's lots of sun in California. So Florida has better policies for folks to go solar now than
Mhm.
California does, given the PUC's recent attempts to just kill the solar industry in California.
And of course, obviously, regulations in California versus Florida are vastly different.
Sure, but we had those regulations and we had good union jobs and we still had a robust solar industry until the PUC stepped in and changed the rules and bait and switched. So
Mm.
right now, the PUC first went after homeowners and said, no, it's not going to pencil out for you with the decision that they made in December of 2022, which is now on appeal to the California Supreme Court, by the way. And then they went after farms and businesses and multifamily houses and said, hey, no, you guys are going solar. If you have more than one meter, you're going to have to pay PG&E's rates on all but the 1 meter that has solar. So for instance, if you had a university campus where they had a big solar roof or parking lot, and that tried to feed several buildings, the PUC has newly said, no, you can't do that. No, you can't. You can only feed one building, and the rest of the buildings have to pay the PG&E rate. Well, the problem is so many schools and farms and businesses put their solar in and connected in the under the old rules, and then the PUC changed the rules, and now they're going to be hit with huge bills right at the time the schools are also going to get cut. How ridiculous! And then, of course, they did that wasn't enough, and they did today the community solar thing, which is really an Orwellian version of community solar, which now constricts the solar programs, really focuses it only on the low income community, and then caps it after on top of all that, so that only a few low income customers are going to additionally benefit.
I don't ever like to defend PG&E. I'm not with this question, but I just want to kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Sure.
Is there a way? I mean, I can understand PG&E looking at their books and being like, look, we have to do all these repairs. We do have to do all of this maintenance that we just didn't do. I mean, they did make mistake after mistake after mistake, and they do have to keep going. I mean, we are locked in this monopoly. They are a business that we need to keep going. Is there a way for PG&E to stay profitable enough and yet not screw us over as badly? Or, I mean, is this just kind of, well, we're going to have to deal with the criticism because otherwise we fail, and there is really no option immediately from PG&E to serve the whole state?
And PG&E is trying that scare tactic exactly. They're saying, would you like safety or would you like wildfires? Then leave it to us. But that's not the actual question. The question is, how do we make the system safe and reliable at a reasonable price? The law says the costs must be reasonable and just, or they are unlawful. And that's up to the PUC to determine. And the problem is the PUC has just abdicated its responsibility in that regard. We just talked about it. You could have these new wires instead of undergrounding. That saves literally billions of dollars and makes us safer faster. Incredible. But what it does do is it cuts into the utilities' profits. But let's be clear, PG&E makes 10 cents off of every dollar of infrastructure. 10 cents. That's an incredibly profitable business. I know a whole lot of businesses in California that would love to make 5 cents off of every dollar in profit. Let's be real. So California is in the top 20% of states when it comes to how high our utility profits are. And we're in the bottom 20% of states when it comes to how reliable and safe our utility systems are. So we should take a lesson from the other states and rein in the utilities costs and require them to get safer. Other states do this routinely. This is not rocket science. It is what it is policy choices to prefer the utility over the economy and over the customer. And that is backwards. And we have to flip that policy choice to the right way.
All right. Well, I never like to leave on a down note with you, Loretta, even though everybody gets their blood boiling every time we talk. So, okay, so we're getting that flat fee that we don't like that's going up. This community solar thing is not going to work, and there's a cap on that. Do we have any hope? Is there something we're looking forward to? Is there a piece of legislation besides the governor's race in the future where we're going to really focus on PG&E and appointing people on the CPUC that actually regulate PG&E? Is there anything that we need to be doing right now, Loretta? Because summer's here. I mean, the unofficial start of summer just happened, so we know how it's going to be.
There is one bright point left in the legislature, which is Senator Josh Becker's bill. I believe it's 3238, SB 3238, which passed the Senate and will go to the Assembly. And what that does is reverse the wrong-headed decision of the PUC to change the rules in the middle of the game for schools and farms and multi-meter businesses. So that's great, right? So we need that changed so that schools and farms and businesses that have more than 1 meter, like they have more than one building, then they have more than 1 meter, they need to be able to benefit from solar, because rooftop solar or, on-property solar, especially paired with storage, is the cleanest, the fastest, and can be, depending on the rules, the cheapest way to clean up our environment and maintain the grid. Because if you're self-generating, you're not pulling from the grid at key and critical times. And that's what we want to be able to do. So it really has so many benefits. And so that bill needs to pass the Assembly. But more than that, there are lots of competitive legislative races throughout California this year because people are moving up. Adam Schiff's going to Congress. Katie Porter gave up her seat. Barbara Lee gave up her seat. Lots of competitive races. Ask those candidates, where do you stand on solar and how are you going to rein in the PUC? And then vote based on the candidate that has the best way to rein in the PUC and whether or not they're going to be a supporter of solar and not of the utilities.
Exactly.
We have a voice right now in several competitive races throughout California. We need to use that voice and that vote.
Absolutely. And you need to, and we do every single race that, if you guys are listening to the sound of my voice in your community, those are the questions you need to ask, because this is one of the issues I think that most directly impacts people. I just paid my PG&E bill and I was actually happy that it was less than $500, Loretta, and it blows my mind. And I, again, don't turn on the AC or the heat. It's so scary, and we don't qualify for the low income things because so many people don't. We're in that bubble of we make too much money to qualify for these programs and not enough to keep affording all these bills that are going up. And so it's really hard.
That's where most Californians are. And let's be clear, even the folks who qualify for the low-income programs and for the private utilities are paying a heck of a lot more than the average customer is in Sacramento, in the municipal utility districts. Because our utility bills are so high, a 30% discount off of a super high electric bill is still higher than what people are paying in Los Angeles and Sacramento, which is ridiculous when you are a low-income customer.
Absolutely. I can't even imagine. Loretta Lynch, former president of the CPUC. I always appreciate the fact that you're so available for our viewers and our listeners. You don't have any, I get so many emails and I kind of bank them. And I'm like, okay, we're going to bring Loretta in. We're going to talk about this. And you are our voice. You're the one that I turn to for all of the expert analysis. And I always appreciate you coming on. So Loretta Lynch, thank you so much.
It is a pleasure anytime, Nikki. I love talking with you.
All right. Thank you so much. That is Loretta Lynch, and that is our show. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, make sure you click that thumbs up button, show your support for the show. And if you can, Kim and I, we would really appreciate any financial support you can give. So just go to thenikkimadoroshow.com. thenikkimadoroshow.com. Our Patreon link is there. If you like PayPal, go to paypal.com, hit that send button, and then put in the email address, thenikkimadoroshow@gmail.com, and support our sponsor, Auntie Tabby's Island Flavors. She has delicious barbecue sauces and hot sauces. I mean, it's the guava barbecue sauce is perfect for the summertime. The pineapple hot sauce, hibiscus hot sauce. If you go to auntietabbys.com, use the coupon code NICKKIM, NIKKIM, and you get 10% off each and every order. And we really do appreciate all of your help as well. So thank you so much. We will talk again next time. Bye-bye.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. Miss Brown, like a beautiful blossom. You're all so the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow.